Ladies and ladymen, prepare yourselves for a hot take. I love Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's my favorite game in the Smash series, and one of my favorite games ever. I love the roster, I love the gameplay, I love the presentation. I love how it celebrates the history of its own series and video games in general, while also addressing a whole host of long-standing fan demands. I even love some of the things other people decidedly don't. Don't watch my old videos. But of course, that isn't to say I love everything about Smash Ultimate. I don't limit my opinions to either total positivity or total negativity. What do I look like, an average internet guy? Don't answer that. No, I can tell you about issues I have with even my favorite pieces of media. In fact, Smash Ultimate has one major problem that bothers me more than just about anything else. And no, it isn't the tiny number of cutscenes and platforming in its adventure mode, nor the lackluster online experience, nor the weirdness of the stage hazard toggle, nor the antics of one blocky boy. Sure, I take some degree of issue with all of those things and could go on about them. Well, except for that stuff about Steve. He's fine. No, my biggest beef with this beefy game can be found in its main collectible: spirits. More accurately, one specific aspect of spirits. See, unlike most other Smash Bros. Fans, I don't really have an issue with trophies being replaced by spirits. If you've seen my award-winning Smash 4 video, you'd know that I have my reasons for not being heartbroken by the change. In my opinion, while trophies were incredibly awesome in every way in Melee, they had become a little lamer in each subsequent entry after their introduction. By and large, gone were trophies with textures and sheen that actually looked like figurines and used either completely original models not found anywhere else, or assets that had only been seen at such places as promotional art. In Brawl, and especially Smash 4, 90% of trophies were just lame, untouched models from elsewhere in those games, or the character's latest appearances, not even making an attempt to look like something you'd see in a memorabilia shop. And that's not even mentioning the really shitty ones, like the trophies that are just 2D sprites on top of a plate. Quite frankly, it got to the point where seeing the trophies no longer wowed me. So, I have no problem with what the team did for Smash Ultimate. They did away with 3D trophies and effectively replaced them with spirits, which, by contrast, represent characters and objects with pre-existing 2D artwork and renders. Obviously, that would immediately seem like quite the downgrade, but from where I'm standing, all they really did was replace assets that were mostly reused with different assets that were mostly reused. In the grand scheme of things, I find that to be a relatively minor trade-off, and if that apparently spared the development team from an even bigger workload, then I've got very few qualms. Nowhere near as cool as Melee's trophies, but neither were those of Brawl and Smash 4, so whatever. And of course, unlike trophies, spirits aren't just for looking. These things incorporated the previously seen concepts of event matches, stickers, and equipment. There are spirit battles themed after the character or entity in question, and to get the edge in these battles, you must equip your own spirits with similarly themed buffs and bonuses. I do enjoy this way of representing all these non-playable characters through the gameplay. And hey, I even really like Ultimate's otherwise unpopular adventure mode, World of Light, where spirits and spirit battles are primarily found. Don't watch my old videos. So yeah, there you go. I like spirits and the content surrounding them quite a bit, probably more than most. What then is this unavoidable issue I have with them? Oh, f off. Here's a fun fact about me. I love in-game bios. If your video game has a menu where players can read detailed descriptions of its characters, locations, and more, that game's already got a decent head start in my book. It's just one of those little, mostly superfluous things like hub worlds or 2D overworld maps that really gets my dumb gamer brain going. The Batman Arkham series catching you up on Bruce's rogues gallery, down to listing their comic book appearances. The Pokédex acting as an insanely informative yet natural in-universe bestiary. The Soulsborne franchise waxing poetically about the most f***ed up atrocities Miyazaki can conjure up. I don't know how else to say it, I just dig this stuff. And as you might expect, Super Smash Bros. Trophies were no different. In Melee, Brawl, and Smash 4, there were neat little descriptions next to the models. Most of these were just basic summaries of whatever the trophy was representing. Here's Link, here's where he's from, and here's what he does. Obviously, including something like that makes a ton of sense for Smash Bros. The whole point of the series is that it brings so many vastly different IPs together. Most of the people who play Smash aren't going to be super familiar with all of the games represented. Hell, I'm sure a good chunk of the Smash player base hasn't experienced most of the video games represented. So, why not build in this great feature to catch those people up to speed on the various fighters and beyond? Plus, sometimes these trophy descriptions would mention pretty obscure bits of lore. The Goomba trophies throughout the series refer to them as traitors to the Mushroom Kingdom, something that to my knowledge hasn't been acknowledged in the Super Mario series since the original Super Mario Bros. Manual. And did you know that Final Destination is the nexus point between fiction and reality? I did. Not to mention, even with the information I already know about my favorite games, characters, and stories, I just think it's cool to see how an official source describes these things, you know? It's hard to describe, but there's just something undeniably cool and special about it that you can't quite get from unaffiliated fans compiling this information. And to be clear, this is the one element of trophies that I'd say didn't harshly deteriorate over time. Yeah, I may prefer the more straight-laced writing style of Melee's trophy descriptions over the increasingly self-aware and cheeky approach that crop up later, but still, these blurbs more or less stayed the same through Smash 4, fulfilling their purpose and doing a damn good job of it. And then that brings us to Smash Ultimate Spirits, where we get the name, the series title, and that's it. Why? Well, it's likely for the same pragmatic reasons that 3D trophies themselves are no more. Writing even just a few sentences each for this many spirits? Yeah, I'd imagine that's no mean feat, and in
current year,
when any curious player can just pull out their phone and within seconds find everything there is to know about any given character, setting, or series, I guess it's little surprise that detailed descriptions were deemed to be obsolete and not really worth the trouble. And like using pre-existing pics, I suppose it's a fair concession given the circumstances of Ultimate's development, but this one stings a lot more. Unlike the models, this does feel like we lost something substantial, and despite what Sakurai and his team might have thought at the time, worth the effort. Yes, someone could just Google the name of a spirit and, in all likelihood, find themselves on a fan wiki. That's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. But even putting aside the fact that those sites can often be painfully unreliable, it goes back to fan info dumps not feeling as special as the official alternative. A fan wiki can be well researched, filled to the brim with citations, and not leave a single stone unturned. But again, it isn't the same. But if we're to ignore that as well, and you know what, fair enough, that's a super subjective, abstract, intangible factor that I'm still struggling to put into words and could very well just be a me thing for all I know, I still don't think this is good enough. I don't believe just do it yourself is ever a particularly convincing argument with this sort of thing, and I think it's especially weak in the context of this game. Not just because the Smash series as a whole is supposed to celebrate the history of video games, but because of the actual purpose of Spirits in Ultimate. If anything, descriptions would be even more appropriate now than they were with trophies. As I mentioned, you get most of these spirits from spirit battles, and those battles have special themes and conditions to simulate fighting against that spirit or otherwise represent them. The problem with this is that a lot of the time, if you aren't already familiar with the character or thing in question, those references can go right over your head. You know what would help with that? If after you win yourself the spirit, you could go read up on the context. Gee willikers, wouldn't that just fit perfectly and add an extra bit of incentive to the single player content? Look, I love Smash Ultimate, I like spirits, and I don't mind losing the old trophies, but without the biographical blurbs that trophies once had, spirits and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a whole feel incomplete. Smash, on top of everything else, is often described as a video game museum, but what good is an exhibit without its placard? Oh my god, I just spent like 10 minutes complaining about not being told shit I already know. Big thank you to my channel members, Antis Munchie, Satellaview64, and Tim Filion. Your support means the most.